What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we're breaking down day 15 of trial number 2 for Karen Read. We had a lot of foundational witnesses for the Commonwealth today that they have to call in order to set up the next witnesses coming. But you also get to see what a good defense team can do to a somewhat simple witness for the Commonwealth, where they can start to lay the foundation of their own theory and of that how they see the evidence and where they see the major holes in this case. We're also going to see more clips of Karen Read herself and discuss the minor testimony that was done off camera and what we think of the lawyers calling those witnesses and how you cross-examine those witnesses and what reports are that those witnesses testified to or witness testified to in this second trial. Make sure you guys hit the like button and make sure you're all subscribed if you're not already. Let's get to it. So it was a little bit of a late start this morning. And by the way, I literally just got home from Tallahassee, got out of my car. I was so tired, miserable, just like long drive, listening to this trial the whole way. And I jumped in the cold plunge and now I'm energized and ready to rock and roll. So have no fear. This is not going to be a slow and boring and tired show at all, which it was at risk of being until about 7 minutes ago. So we're here. We're ready to rock and roll. And it started out with more clips of Karen Read. And we're going to listen to them and we're going to talk about what they specifically respond to, why the Commonwealth decided to play them now, and are there too many clips? Are these good clips? And we'll continue to try to think about what Hank Brennan's theory is and plan and strategy is around these clips.
The Commonwealth seeks to introduce 2 clips.
Okay.
The first clip the Commonwealth would seek to introduce and show the jury is clip 20.
There's any window here that you guys have really been going at it. This was sort of like a last date on you. Was that going on?
That was not going on. I made it clear to me, I'm never breaking up with you.
It's kind of hard to hear, so I'll kind of summarize some of it. It seemed like it was about to be over. She said, John made it clear to me, I'm never breaking up with you.
Never that we're in this good or bad, but you're the best person I've ever.
It's so obviously clipped. I don't know what the jury's going to think of that. Are they going to like it, not like it? But he's playing the parts of the interview, knowing that the niece, KF, is coming up next. So it's the first thing they're listening to today to set up the very first witness they're going to call. That's clip number 1, but there are 2 of them.
The Commonwealth would ask to show clip 19.
I don't think, I don't see how John would have known about my text with Brian. And I'm not sure if he knew he would have reacted very strongly. I think we would have broken up, but I don't think John would have lost it and caused a fight. I didn't feel like John's emotions with me got really strong.
So the first one I didn't find overly compelling. That John was never going to break up with her. She was such a great person. It wasn't really near the end. But maybe they played it just to contradict the second clip that they knew was coming. Which again, I don't find that overly compelling. But the second clip, in response to the Brian Higgins texts, the very clear argument by the defense that was potentially a motive, that Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe could have gotten into a fight, it could have gone too far, and it could have turned into an accidental death. That was the very clear motive, right? With Buchanan on the stand when they were going through Brian Higgins' texts. So I personally do think that second clip was helpful to the Commonwealth. You guys let me know. I know that they're clipped. I know we're going to get more context from the defense. I get all that. But to me, if I'm trying to find something, which I am, if the Commonwealth's presenting evidence, I'm trying to figure out what's good for the Commonwealth, because we're going to talk about some other evidence they presented today where I'm like, huh? But the second clip, I do think, would put a damper or dampen my thought as a juror that, oh yeah, that's a really good motive. They could have gotten into a fight. It could have ended badly. And that is something that I think is really, the sting is taken out of it by that interview clip. Karen doesn't think John O'Keefe would have got that mad, even if he knew about the Brian Higgins stuff. They probably would have broken up, but he wasn't overly emotional. She doesn't think he would have gotten into a fight about that. I find that pretty interesting and compelling. Now, that doesn't mean Brian Higgins wouldn't have gotten pissed off. That doesn't mean Brian Higgins wouldn't have started a fight. That doesn't mean Brian Higgins wouldn't have ended the fight, right? So I still think that it's potentially there as a motive, but I understand why Hank Brennan played that second clip. All right. So let me answer a few questions. Okay. So I knew this was going to come up. Richard Lowe's, please address Bev calling the attorney an a-hole. Just like so many other things in this trial, it is so hard for me to make out what she actually said. I know everybody's 100% positive. I would be absolutely shocked if it was true. So let's talk about if it's not true. It sounded like something. I listened to it. I tried to listen for that. I don't know that that's what she said. Okay. But because people think that is what she said, number one, completely inappropriate. Obviously, she could be reprimanded by the chief judge in her jurisdiction. She could be absolutely recused from this case if you call the lawyer an a-hole during trial for being biased against that lawyer. You would absolutely have a great recusal argument. And if she denied that, then you could obviously appeal it up to the higher courts. So if that actually happened, she could be booted off of this case. Of course, the lawyers could talk to her, could tell her, don't do stuff like that, apologize if the jury heard it, whatever. But that would be another level. I really don't think that's what she said. If it is what she said, there should be repercussions. I mean, that's what I'll say on that. I'm not going to go any further. Some people said it was McLaughlin. I don't know who it was, right? I don't know who it was. Hi, Peter. Why aren't you covering any of the Kohberger updates? Please promise you'll be covering the trial. So, Marissa, if I asked you to guess why I'm not covering much of the Kohberger stuff, it's just too much. Like, there's just too much going on. It's impossible for me to listen to, 8-hour hearings or things like that. So I really can't jump too much into Kohberger. I'm trying to keep up somewhat with the P. Diddy trial. I'm trying to keep up with the Lori Vallow stuff. There's the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. People have asked why I haven't been keeping up with that as much. It's just, there's a lot, right? There's just a lot going on. I will absolutely be covering the trial. I'll absolutely be covering updates on what's happening in Kohberger after the Karen Read trial is over. It's just, I got to cry uncle at some point, right? It's just too much. If we get a day off of court from Karen Read, that gives me the opportunity, like I was able to go look into Diddy, that gives me the opportunity to go do something. I've heard the Lori Vallow. Oh, so here's Kathy. Glad you made it home safely. Have you looked at the pretrial hearing for Lori Vallow? That judge put her in her place today. So I have seen some clips, and I may do a very short video because that's easy, right? We already know what's going on with Vallow. If it's a shorter clip, I can do a shorter video on it. No big deal. So I may do something like that. And yes, Chris, I forgot. Peter, for the end, Becky Hill arrested in Lori Vallow contentious hearing with the judge. When you can, please. Thanks as always. And then we have Ms. Becky. I will definitely be breaking out that at some point. It's not going to be today, unfortunately. If the Commonwealth tried to argue that it was either/both intentional or negligent, I immediately jumped to, you don't actually know what happened. And that's where I talked about yesterday, the Aruba stuff. The Aruba stuff to me could be a very big swing and miss. And that leads us and transitions us perfectly into the niece, KF, testifying. They didn't call the nephew this time like they did last time. And there are no cameras in the courtroom, which I think is completely appropriate. I am going to pull up. First, we're going to start with Ted Daniel. He was in the courtroom and he summarized her testimony. So first, we're going to look at this. If you can't read it, don't worry. I'm going to read his and Christina Rex's. So the niece testified that Karen Read and John O'Keefe's relationship deteriorated after the New Year's Aruba trip. I remember hearing him say the relationship wasn't good, but it had run its course. Was good, but it had run its course. She was very upset by it. She was yelling louder than JJ. She said Karen Reed woke her up at 4:30 on 129. Defendant came into my room. She told me my uncle never came home. She was very frantic. The defendant was asking what could have happened, asking could I have done something, got hit by a plow. Later the same day at One Meadows, Karen Reed just said to myself and my grandfather that she thought she was living in a nightmare. On cross, Yannetti, the niece told David Yannetti that Karen Reed watched her play sports, took her to visit private school, helped her plan her birthday in 2021. Yannetti said that Karen would help you with school projects. The niece said a couple of them, maybe, yeah. And then Clark got on the stand. And then I also want to look at a little more detailed version of this is Christina Rex. You can't see that. Let me get my head out of the way here. Niece testifies it was kind of dependent on the day. Some days were more on good standards than other days weren't on good standards at all. She would favorite my brother. She would not ignore me, but it felt like coldness. They were pretty close, the brother and Reed. Maybe that's why they didn't call him this time. Lighthearted in the beginning. It changed by the end of 21, beginning of 22. Was the brother one of the witnesses that was reluctant to testify? I don't know. They were fighting a lot. When I saw the fights, it was normally at my house or on the phone. When they would fight, Karen Reed was very angry and upset, louder than O'Keefe. Aruba incident. So they're already starting to get into it, which would make me think Judge Cannoni is going to allow testimony on the Aruba incident. Reed and O'Keefe had an argument in the niece and nephew's hotel room. O'Keefe checked on them and told the nephew to get off the iPad. Reed defended. O'Keefe checked on them and told the nephew to get off the iPad. Reed defended the nephew, started yelling about how he had kissed someone else and she had witnessed it. It was really loud. She was very upset. The relationship changed after Aruba, January of 22. O'Keefe and Reed in the kitchen fighting while the niece was in the room next door. Their relationship was good, but it had run its course. Don't remember exactly what she said, but she was upset by it. He asked her to leave the house. She did not want to leave the house. O'Keefe saw the niece in the other room and got angry that she witnessed the fight, asked Reed more aggressively to leave, then went upstairs to the bedroom. Reed followed him upstairs, banged on the door. In later days and weeks, I could tell that there was tension. They were cold towards each other. A couple of times a week, tension and arguing. I heard the defendant on the phone, and she was saying that me and my brother were really worried. On one occasion, when she was trying to get John O'Keefe to come home, when he had left the house for a drive, and he said she wasn't actually worried. Then the night of his death, she had a rule that she had to charge her phone in O'Keefe's room at bedtime. After her friend left before midnight, she was home alone and put her phone in O'Keefe's room, went to bed. Reed came into her room at 4:30, shaking her, told me my uncle never came home. She was frantic. Reed asked the niece to use her cell phone to call O'Keefe. No answer. Reed asked for phone numbers she didn't have, including McCabe. Niece remembers things Karen said on the phone, but not necessarily to whom, because there were several calls like, what could have happened? Could I have done something? Could he have been hit by a snowplow? Here, her memory had to be refreshed with prior testimony from trial 1. Maybe I hit him. Interesting that she wouldn't say that on her own, but she had to have her memory refreshed. That's interesting. The niece says that she had never seen Reed like this. Reed came back to the house with Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts. Jen checked on the niece and was level-headed, not frantic, not like she had just conspired to do something. Karen did not interact with the niece. At this point, niece was very nervous, she says. Karen Reed came back later that morning after the hospital with her dad and brother. She said to me and my grandfather that she felt like she was living a nightmare. And then on cross, okay, because we're going to talk about crossing witnesses like this. Yannetti asked, when Karen Reed spent all this time with you, you didn't call her the defendant, right? No, the niece says. You called her Karen. Yes. Things Karen Reed would do with the niece. By the way, he's trying to say, now they've gotten you against her, but there was a time you loved Karen Reed. Things Karen Reed would do with the niece: nails done once a month, hair done at the salon. Reed attended basketball games, possibly, but so did my uncle. Soccer, softball, yes. Helped straighten niece's hair maybe once a week. Planned birthday party. 2020 scavenger hunt, yes. You would stay with Karen at her house in Mansfield, yes. Then Yannetti got to Aruba. Reed took the kids for an Italian dinner and ice cream. Niece doesn't remember. O'Keefe was in the room with you the whole night with Karen Reed and the nephew, Yannetti asked. She doesn't remember. She just remembers after the fight that he fell asleep in niece's bed for a few hours. Is it your memory JJ rang in the new year asleep? Yannetti asked. Niece doesn't remember. I had just gotten dumped by my 8th grade boyfriend, so it was a bit of a crisis. Chuckles heard throughout the courtroom. Niece testifies about the relationship after Aruba. There was never any physical contact between the two of them. Correct. Yannetti asked if Reed continued to spend a lot of time at the house with the kids. It was the same amount of time, but it wasn't the same, the niece said. Okay. So when discussing how and when to call a minor witness, especially a victim or somebody related to the victim, it is a difficult decision, but it's one that comes up more often than you would expect. And I've heard a lot of people condemning the prosecutors for calling them. I've heard people condemning the defense for cross-examining this witness. Like, how could you do that? Why would you ever want to cross-examine a witness like this? And from my perspective, I understand it from both lawyers and what they did and why they did it. When people's lives are at stake, John O'Keefe's life was already taken. Karen Reed's life is obviously on the line, and you have a lot of victims whose lives have been very seriously affected. Family members, loved ones of John O'Keefe. So when, the most important things are on the line, you have to do what's best for your case. You have to do what's best to get justice, what you believe justice to be as the lawyer for either side. That's not always easy, and it's not always everybody is going to agree with what that justice looks like. But if you think you need to call a minor witness, a minor victim, you need to do it. We've done it in our cases, even if they've lost a loved one, if their life has been changed forever, a lot of times the jury needs to hear what they have to say. And as you can see, sure, part of it could be a sympathy play from Hank Brennan, but she testified to what the relationship was like. She testified to things that were inconsistent with some of the comments Karen Reed made in some of her clips. So her testimony could potentially be important to this jury. On the other side, Yannetti has to cross-examine her if he feels like it is necessary to call out inconsistencies, to point out things that are good for his case, for his client's case. Their relationship, what was it like? John O'Keefe and Karen Reed's, it was good sometimes. It was never physical. Important, very important points to bring out. It doesn't seem like she was on the stand for a long period of time. You don't want to make it any worse than it has to be, but sometimes it is necessary. And I understand why people say, don't do it. Don't ever call him. Can't believe he did this. This shows me he's desperate. I don't know. I don't know if it was always the plan or if he's adapting and changing. But from my perspective, I understand, and we have had to do it. We have had to cross-examine victims that are minors. It's brutal. It's very hard. But sometimes, and I'll just tell you, so there's actually a lot of psychology, and we've called experts to talk about the fact that minors can actually be affected by hearing other people's testimony more than adults, and can have their testimony altered by talking to law enforcement, by hearing their parents or grandparents or friends tell them a story over and over again. It's a sad reality. It's part of these trials, and it's something that trial lawyers just have to do sometimes. I do understand why people get uncomfortable with it. So I get it. I get it. All right. Let me answer a few questions here. Laura said, hey, Peter, Boston attorney here. Can't get any of my work done watching the second trial, just yelling at the TV. I get it. Michelle L. John O'Keefe seemed pretty bothered by a random plumber. LOL. That's a good point. And that's a fair point. Cover the BK trial and these hearings. This Karen Reed coverage is not interesting anymore for me. Sincerely, your pregnant listener. Okay. Well, again, a lot of it has to do with what people are asking me questions about, and the vast majority is still focused on Karen Reed. Even P. Diddy, I did an update on it, and there's just not as many people interested in it and asking me questions. So I got to kind of pick and choose what I can cover for what the most people have questions for, and I feel like I can shed light and add value to what the legal content is you guys are watching. Izzy, Peter, did you read about Becky Hill getting charged? I absolutely did. Tons of questions on that. Yeah. Trying to think if I should do something short on it or longer. Just that's the stuff that goes through my head. Joe, Peter, I appreciate you. Don't spread yourself too thin. I'm doing my best, right? Because I also want the content to be good and not just to do it. I want to dig in. I want to think about it. I want to see how it applies, what could happen, and answer the questions you guys have on whatever the content is I'm doing. Meg R, I've been thinking about closing, and given the last jury's thoughts, they needed to finalize all 3 counts to reach a conclusion. How does the defense make this clear without almost encouraging them to find her guilty on count 2? You go through it one by one and make sure they understand each one of these individual counts, you do your own individual analysis on, you write your answer in the blank, and you're done with that one. Then you go to the next, and you're done with that one. Explain them as individual counts, going through them, handling it individually. Jamie, thanks for gifting 10 Lawyer You Know memberships. Let's jump now to the first live witness that we saw today. Zachary Clark, Crime Scene Services. The direct was done by Adam Lally. He went to Canton PD, 9 a.m., met Proctor, looked at the vehicle. Proctor asked him to document with photographs and record the documentation. He explains the gloves, the masks, the rulers, photographing before touching or moving. And every time the Commonwealth has a witness do that, I can't help but think to myself, it would be nice if the entire investigation was done that way. It would have been nice if everybody was following the proper protocol and procedure so that we know that this is all valid, appropriately collected, not messed with, not tampered with, appropriate chain of custody. And every time I hear a Commonwealth witness explain stuff like that, that's the first thing that pops into my mind. I didn't hear him say when he brought all the tools that he brought, red Solo cups, leaf blower, Stop and Shop bags. He did talk about fingerprints. They did publish some of the photos. And he did explain how the backup warning signal was working on the Lexus. I'm not sure if that helps them, right? I mean, I guess they're trying to prove some kind of intent or that she wanted to hurt him or injure him or even kill him. So she would have seen him. Okay. I'm pretty sure if you're like drunk driving and you have no clue what's going on and you're blasted, like, I don't think you care quite as much about the backup camera or even notice the beep or whatever, but I don't know. Never tried it. Then we get to the Yannetti cross. Tolley was his supervisor when he started working at Norfolk. Yannetti said he was removed. That objection was sustained. I think this is the part where people are saying she called Yannetti an a-hole. The judge says that Yannetti is wrong about that. Yannetti says, let's go to sidebar. She says no at first, I think. And then eventually he asks another question. He keeps pushing. And so they call a sidebar. When he comes back from the sidebar, Yannetti moves on. This witness did not know about the Canton conflict because of the Alberts. Proctor was at Canton PD inside the Sallyport already when this person showed up, and that was a common theme. And that was a good job by the defense with the cross-examination of most of these witnesses to continue to say Proctor was in control, Proctor was there, Proctor was the lead investigator, Proctor was there before you documented any of this, right? So some of the other stuff that wasn't documented, it's like, oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that convenient? But before we get the official documentation that sounds trustworthy, Proctor was already there and had the opportunity to do something. That's the narrative the defense is trying to push to the jury. No idea what access Proctor had. July of the next year, he was involved again, interviewing Colin Albert. He said, did you know it was the nephew of the homeowner? Did you know they had a relationship with Proctor? Objection overruled. He continued to try to push. And again, the judge stopped it, but let's listen to a little bit of that.
On July 18th of 2023, you participated in this investigation again, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And that was because, in part, you had now joined the Norfolk CPAC unit, correct?
Correct.
And you participated in an interview of Colin Albert at the Norfolk DA's office, right?
That's right.
You knew at the time that Colin Albert was the nephew of the homeowner, Brian Albert?
I'll allow that. Did you know that at the time?
Could you rephrase the question?
Sure. At the time that you were called in for this interview and told that you would be participating in an interview of Colin Albert, you knew that he was Brian Albert's nephew, correct?
I was advised that prior to the interview, yes.
You conducted that interview along with Michael Proctor, correct?
Correct.
At the time, Michael Proctor was a state trooper in that unit, correct?
Yes, he was.
And you knew he was also the lead investigator on the case, correct?
He was the case officer, yes.
He was the case officer, right? But just wait, because there's another trooper coming that's going to call him the lead investigator. It's just not a good look, right? And it's become such a thing in this trial.
At the time of that interview on July 18th, before you began questioning of Colin Albert, had Michael Proctor revealed to you his connections with the Albert family?
Sustained.
Reapproach.
Go on to the next area and see if you can come back.
She tells him to move on, and he's like, no, I'm going to try again.
Did Michael Proctor reveal to you that he and Kevin Albert had socialized together by drinking alcohol in his cruiser?
Sustained injures, I'm going to ask you to strike that question, disregard.
I need to be heard at sidebar.
I will hear you.
All right, so that was I don't know if you heard it. I'll play it one more time, I guess, since I already had it queued up, I didn't realize it. This is where the a-hole comment is. Listen closely. If you think she said it or somebody said it, fine, you can be the judge of that. I'll play it one more time.
Did Michael Proctor reveal to you that he and Kevin Albert had socialized together by drinking alcohol in his cruiser?
Sustained injures, I'm going to ask you to strike
Right, yeah.
that question, disregard.
I need to be heard at sidebar.
I will hear you.
I mean, that could be a million things in my opinion. But again, you guys can take it for what you want. The important thing is, though, she basically told Yannetti not to do it. He still did it and put in front of the jury that they were drinking in their cruiser together. The jury heard it. It's inadmissible. That's probably inappropriate, right? I think they should be able to get into this as the defense, but if the judge tells you not to, that's probably a step too far, especially when the objection is sustained. But if I'm the defense, if I'm Yannetti, I'm saying, I wanted to be heard at sidebar. She said no. She said keep going. So I asked my next question. And then finally, I forced my way up to sidebar. And then afterwards, he moves on. There was another long break. He moves on. He doesn't ask it again. But he was able to make his record, would be my guess, at sidebar. Then they asked this witness who wrote the report on the Colin Albert interview. Michael Proctor, of course. Proctor's name is all over it today. Wasn't ever asked to go to Fairview to document and photograph evidence, as Proctor kept going back for weeks and weeks and weeks, even though this guy was apparently available to Proctor to use for that reason. And he decided not to. Why? Why did he decide not to use this witness for that reason? Toy, can a judge block a witness from being called like she didn't agree with the kids being witnesses? No, not really. If somebody files a motion for a protective order for a specific reason, then maybe the judge could grant that motion for a protective order and block that witness. Very hard to do, especially with a confrontation clause. The criminal defense has a right to confront witnesses that have evidence against them, testify against them, or have evidence that is good for them. They have a right to call them. So it's very difficult to do something like that. Daisy, sorry if this was addressed, but as Bev ruled on Aruba, I saw Kaylee testified about it, but wasn't sure if a ruling would impact that or not. I haven't seen an official ruling. I would assume she granted it because of that exact reason, because KF testified to it. Sherry, thank you for your updates. Do you think the defense will call Proctor? Yes, I absolutely think they will call Proctor. Kayla, trials sometimes show video evidence of experts testing. Why do you think they haven't done that with a car and a 6-foot, 200-pound dummy, even if just to prove the taillight couldn't have shattered the way the Commonwealth claims? I don't know the answer to that. Every jurisdiction has little different rules about whether you can do this or not. How reliable is it? How similar is it? So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. She said, a-hole, it's clear as day if you are using headphones and have the volume up. Okay. It's clear as day, according to Lee. Do lawyers ever ask objectionable questions on purpose? So I don't know if I'll say objectionable questions on purpose, but we definitely know this one might be objectionable. We'll see what the judge says. It's not really a surprise sometimes, certain questions that get objected to, but lawyers really shouldn't ask things they know are inappropriate or improper. Absolutely not. But a lot of times we disagree with the judge. Like, we think a question's fine, she doesn't, or the judge doesn't, and that's what they're there for, to be the gatekeeper. All right, next is Trooper Brent. We go through the background and training on February 3rd, called to Fairview, I believe. 9:45 a.m. arrived. Tully, Proctor, etc. were there. He went to Meadows. He documented the Traverse and the camera, took pictures of it. No damage to the garage doors or the Traverse. That was basically it. Each one of these Commonwealth witnesses to me were very simple, were called for a very quick and easy point, and the defense made way more hay on cross. My opinion. Then we got crossed by Yannetti, and we'll just play this part real quick because Yannetti got this witness to see, what do you call former Trooper Proctor?
They were recovered. Several of these items were under how much snow?
I would estimate there was one particular item that was about a foot and a half under the snow.
That's still Lally.
You are all set, sir. Thank you.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth called Brian Gallerani.
Hold on, I missed it.
My only involvement was on February 3rd.
So that means that on February 18th, nearly 3 weeks after January 29th,
Took notes of what I saw and what I photographed.
Michael Proctor was the one to write the report.
I must have just completely missed this timestamp. My bad.
Time, who had access to that traverse during those 5 days, correct?
That is correct.
Now, as of February 3rd of 2022, you, I believe, testified you were part.
And again, both from your review. Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
We'll just listen
Any
to
questions, Mr.
a couple
Kennedy?
minutes across.
To be clear, the Chevy Traverse that you photographed at One Meadows, you did so on February 3rd of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you realized at the time that was 5 days prior to the incident in question, which was January 29th of 2022?
5 days after, not prior.
Did I say prior?
You did.
Thank you for correcting me because you're right. You were photographing it 5 days after January 29th, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's fair to say, sir, that your earliest involvement in the case was February 3rd of 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you don't know, and you didn't know at the time, who had access to that traverse during those 5 days, correct?
That is correct.
Now, as of February 3rd of 2022, you, I believe, testified you were part of the crime scene services section of the Massachusetts State Police, correct?
Yes, sir.
You met former Trooper Michael Proctor on February 3rd at 34 Fairview Road in Canton.
Yes, I did.
At the time, did you know you were at the home of a Boston police officer named Brian Albert?
I did not.
And February 3rd was the first and only time that you responded to 34 Fairview Road, correct?
That is correct.
With regard to anything that you saw on the lawn or on the snow that day, you have no personal knowledge as to how any of those items got there, correct?
I do not.
And 5 days after January 29th, you had no personal knowledge at the time of who had access to that front lawn during those 5 days, correct?
That is correct.
You had no information that a guard had ever been posted near that lawn?
Not that I'm aware of.
And when you got there, there was no crime scene tape, correct?
No, there was not.
There was no tent?
No.
Other than the police officers standing there on February 3rd, the lawn was open to anyone who wanted to look at it, just like any other lawn in the street, right?
I'm unaware of that. I don't know.
And another thing I want to point out for what the defense is doing is they're using these witnesses that the Commonwealth is calling for this reason. And they're like, you know what? We're going to go back over all this other stuff we've already been laying the foundation for. Proctor's involved in everything. Proctor's the lead investigator. The crime scene wasn't secured. Meadows wasn't secured. People could have tampered with this, that, or the other. That's a very smart thing to do because you use these witnesses as your witnesses, even though they are Commonwealth witnesses. Thank you, Nadi Knitter, gifting some memberships.
Now, in terms of your actions that day in documenting the scene with photographs, you did not write a report on what you saw and what you photographed, correct?
I took notes of what I saw and what I photographed.
Michael Proctor was the one to write the report in which he reported that you were the photographer on scene, correct?
I don't know what Michael Proctor did for a report, so I can't testify to that.
Okay, but you didn't write a report.
I wrote a report of what I did, showing up at the scene and taking photos and then submitting those photos to the Norfolk County Detectives Unit.
You knew at the time that Michael Proctor was the lead investigator on the case, correct?
Yes, I did.
There we go. He knew. And it seems like all the guys that are not in the group, are perfectly fine calling him the lead investigator. And he got that he was, in fact, the lead investigator on this case. Then we get a couple more foundational witnesses for the Commonwealth, the DNA swab guy, the MSP crime lab, Hartnett, she's a civilian worker, background experience. February 1st, went to see the Lexus. Proctor was there, talks about the procedure again, gloves, cleaning the instruments she uses, documentation, screen for blood in the undercarriage of the vehicle. It was negative. Back bumper had glass on it. Also scratches and a dent, and they show that on the rear trunk door panel. There was a hair in the same area, which we knew about this stuff. Chipped paint, the dent, the hair, all of that, right? She removed the entire taillight, needed some help with it. She shows it in the bag. There were some loose pieces. They deal with all of that. She explained where she swabs on the taillight. She was given the red Solo cups. Obviously, you knew that was going to come back up again. She talked about the clothing that she looked at that was stored in the paper bags. She swabbed the tears on the sleeves. She collected debris from the sweatshirt, picked off black debris, and there was visible debris that she took, very meticulous about, how she documented it, took it, kept the chain of custody, which to me is almost a negative on its own to the Commonwealth, because it's like, once again, you're highlighting exactly what so many witnesses and law enforcement did not do in this case. And that's problematic when it's that obvious, the difference between how some people worked this case versus others. Belinda, hi, Peter. Question: can sidebar transcripts be used in an eventual appeal? Yes. Yes, they can. Brian B., how many likes or money for you to do a defense closing argument for us, the Lawyer You Know fam? We'll see. We'll see. Enough people ask, I'll probably try to do something like it. It's just always so hard to do because I'll never put in like the effort I would put in if it was actually my case for a closing. And it's so hard to do anything halfway for me, but we'll see. Maybe some kind of outline or something. Big Apple Hoosier, my 6-year-old daughter Harley wants to know if you are more like Peter Rabbit or Peter Parker. She's a budding lawyer for sure. So I loved Peter Rabbit growing up. I had a Peter Rabbit stuffed animal my mom got me. So I love Peter Rabbit. Definitely more Peter Parker, I would say, than Peter Rabbit, though. Okay. So now let's get to the cross, which to me was the highlight of the day. This was Alessi showing his expertise cross-examining this crime lab specialist. Because once again, she was there to testify that she found glass on the bumper, dents, scratches. It wasn't just the taillight and the hair, right? She found all that stuff that really sounds like a car hit a body. It's John O'Keefe's hair. John O'Keefe was hit by this car, right? That's what she is there to prove. Now she's setting it up for the people that are going to talk about what the results of the testing were. But she found it, and she talks about where she found it on February 1st. Simple, kind of in and out, not a very long witness. But Alessi literally flips her into what feels like a defense witness. And the way she answers certain questions that should be very obvious, logical, simple, she struggles to answer, which I was kind of surprised at how she answered some of this. But let's listen to how he sets this up, starting pretty much at the beginning of cross here.
One of the things that you did initially was to conduct an overview of the vehicle meaning the black Lexus SUV that you talked about extensively on direct, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That was important to you, given the limited information that you had at the time about what was contended to be a potential motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
That is something that I would do in any type of exam where I'm looking at a vehicle. I look at the overall vehicle.
So you were looking for anything possible that would rise to the level of investigative concern regarding that vehicle, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're familiar with the parlance investigative concern, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's why you noted various items, for example, scratches on the vehicle?
Yes.
You didn't draw any conclusions as to where those scratches came from, though, did you?
No, I did not.
The dent that you noted and photographed that you discussed on your direct examination, you likewise made no conclusion as to the source or cause of that dent, correct?
That's correct.
And
this is not necessarily novel or some like amazing job or holy cow, how did he think about this? But I do think it's important. It's like you say scratches, you say dents, you say this damage, but you don't know how it got there. It could have been there forever. He tries to ask her at some point, did you look at the odometer? How many miles were on this? I don't even want to go look at my wife's car right now, right? Because I know I'm not going to like what I see. That doesn't mean she hit a person, hopefully. But that's not necessarily what it means. Now, it's pretty close in the vicinity to a busted taillight, and so I get where the Commonwealth is going. But these questions have to be asked. Courtney, Peter, why do experts have to ask the judge permission before looking at their notes? You're not supposed to look at anything while you're testifying. You're supposed to be testifying to your memory. If you need to refresh your recollection, you can look down, refresh, then come up and answer. That's just how it has to go with witnesses. Those are the rules. John O'Rourke, weren't a lot of Alessi and defense questions asked and answered today or repeating? Specifically with Alessi, I will agree with you. Yes. I thought he summarized too many times. I thought he repeated questions too many times, but there was no objection. So Canoni shouldn't really cut him off if the prosecutors aren't objecting to what he's asking. But I felt the same way a couple times. Taylor, why didn't the defense, could they have, asked questions during cross today about proper police procedures, specifically their own training experience? I kind of like that. I would have been like, well, he does get into it somewhat when we get to the red solo cups. I think they're kind of leaving it to logic and obviousness and just the wild nature of a lot of what they did. But I don't disagree with you that they would be like, it's proper to wear gloves. It's proper to not mix things up in the same bag. It's proper to do X, Y, and Z, where these people very clearly would have said, yes, I agree with you there. But again, they've got to pick and choose what they asked. You can't always hit every single detail with every single witness.
You did therefore not make any or draw any conclusions as to whether that dent was caused by any motor vehicle or pedestrian accident, correct?
Correct.
You're a forensic scientist too for the Massachusetts State Police Department, as I understand it.
Yes.
With regard to the taillight that you spoke about rather extensively on your direct examination, you likewise were not able to, and you make no conclusions as to the cause of that broken taillight, correct?
That's correct.
And you draw, therefore, no conclusions with regard to whether that taillight became in the condition that was discussed on direct examination pursuant to any alleged motor vehicle pedestrian incident, correct?
Correct.
The dent, the scratches, the broken taillight on the Lexus, to your knowledge, as you sit here today, could have existed before February 1st, 2022, when you went to Sallyport, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And to your knowledge, the dent, the scratches, the broken taillight could have existed before January 29th of 2022, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You also looked for, as you stated, tissue, blood, biological material, and things of that nature on the vehicle, correct?
Yes, I did.
In that inspection of the vehicle, you didn't see any visible stains or tissue on the vehicle, did you?
No, I did not.
You were told, Ms. Hartnett, that there were wounds on the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And at the time you went to the Sallyport on February 1st of 2022, you were not shown a photograph by anybody of the wounds on the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe, were you?
No, I was not.
However, you've seen since then a photograph of the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe and the wounds on that right arm, correct?
Yes, I have.
With your Honor's permission, if I could publish Exhibit 1 in evidence?
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf? Ms. Hartnett, I'd ask you to take a look at that, and you recognize that what's depicted in that Exhibit 1, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you've seen that pattern of wounds on the right arm as depicted in a photograph of the decedent before, correct?
I've seen this photo before, yes.
You cannot state whether the wounds on the right arm as depicted in Exhibit 1 are from a motor vehicle, can you?
That would be on the scope of my expertise. I don't make any conclusions on injuries on the person.
So the answer is you cannot and do not make any conclusions with regard to the source of the wounds on the right arm as Mr. O'Keefe as depicted in that Exhibit 1, correct?
That's correct.
And you want to make sure the jury is not thinking that this expert is saying, or that this witness is saying that. And that's why you have to confirm it. Brian B., we'll talk about it a little later. It's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. Brittany said, why is no one asking if she swabbed the taillight pieces from the yard? Those are the pieces they claim gave him this injury. I'm not sure they are, because I mean, once it shatters, the shattered part, I guess theoretically that's still attached to the, I don't actually, you know what, Brittany, the fact that we don't know this, or it's not confirmed which ones made these cuts, is a problem for the Commonwealth. Siobhan said, Peter, is 15 days not proving anything about your case normal? Like, we don't even know the cause of death yet. So I don't know if I'd say they haven't proved anything, but they have absolutely not proven in my mind any crimes beyond a reasonable doubt at this point. Maybe they prove she was driving over the legal limit. They proved that her car was there, that she was there, at 34 Fairview, that John O'Keefe was there. So they have proven some stuff, but not enough to connect the dots yet. Is it normal in a 6-week trial? It's not completely abnormal. I think they're doing a little slow, but they really need to start connecting these dots. Some trials are done by now, right? Some trials are done in 5 days. Very serious trials that the state can go bing, bang, bop, boom, and prove the case and be done. It's not happening here. Stringer Bell, thoughts on Alessi? He seems ridiculously smart. He is really smart. I think he does a really good job. I think he's really prepared. I love how prepared he is, right? Sometimes he gets loud at weird times where I'm like, ooh, like, I'm a little like, sometimes it can feel a little brash, but I think he's really smart, really well prepared. And I think he puts it in a way the jury has to see it the way that he sees it because of how he simplifies it and the parts he chooses to cross on. Because you got to realize, as a lawyer, you can be looking at 25 things you can cross on. You got to pick the 5 best. You're not going to hit every single little thing. And I think he does a really good job at what he chooses to cross on. Can Karen Reed ask questions, et cetera, at sidebar? Depends on the judge, but more likely she says something to her attorney, and her attorney will ask that. That is not road rash. Well, additionally, the dents on the car, I would ask ARCA, what type of force would it take to make that dent? And if you can dent a car, this is something we talk about all the time. If you can break a bumper in half, if you can move a trailer hitch and bend the metal frame of a car, can you cause a herniation in someone's neck? Can you tear a shoulder for someone that had their seatbelt on a certain way? Can you rupture patellar tendons when somebody's knees go into the part of the car in front of them? If it's enough force to bend metal frames, it's probably enough force to hurt somebody. And what would those injuries look like to John O'Keefe? Would there be bruising, broken bones? Those are all questions we ask to experts in tons of cases. Maria, Peter, who goes first in closing argument, the prosecution or the defense? The prosecution has the burden, highest burden in the land. They go first and they go last. So they get to go first. Defense goes in the middle. Prosecution gets to do a rebuttal at the end.
And you're also not able to state whether you observed anything on the vehicle.
Mr. Alessi, can we are you done with this?
I'm not yet,
Okay.
Your Honor, but I will let the court know. It'll be shortly. Thank you. And you cannot state that you observed anything on the SUV that would cause the wounds on the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe as depicted in Exhibit 1, correct?
That is not a type of analysis I would perform.
So the answer to that question is no, you cannot state that you observed anything on the vehicle that would cause those wounds to the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe?
Sustained.
We can now take that down, Your Honor. Thank you. Did you look toward the top of the lift gate of the Lexus vehicle when you were at the Sallyport Kent Police Department on February 1st of 2022?
Are you referring to the exterior or the interior?
Exterior.
I don't recall specifically looking at that area. I did an overall examination of the vehicle, with exception to the actual roof of the vehicle. So I don't remember specifically looking at that area.
So as you sit here today, there is nothing notable with regard to that area of the vehicle, correct?
I had nothing in my notes regarding that area, no.
And as you sit here today, there's nothing you're recalling that is notable about the tap part around the lift gate of the back of the SUV, correct?
That's correct.
And that's going to be important later when he shows a video. But they also talk about the undercarriage, and she describes it as basically from the back to the front, the entire underside of the car. She swabbed a bunch of different areas. She looked at it. She didn't see anything. So no blood, no nothing that would make you think she ran over somebody. And, that was a point for the defense as well. And then Alessi gets to ask her about the red Solo cups, which you can almost hear the excitement in his voice.
Position is that the mileage is of not of interest regarding your role. If I got that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. On direct examination about Solo cups and 6 Solo cups, and there were depictions put on the screen. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
So on February 1st, in addition to taking some swabs from the vehicle, you also mentioned that you took swabs of, as I recall it, frozen red-brown stains located inside the red Solo cups?
Yes, that's correct.
Other than in this case, did you ever have to take swabs of red stain material from Solo cups that people usually use for other purposes?
I've never performed a collection like that, no.
I wonder why. And that's the thing. Mr. Gallagher, oh yeah, no big deal. They hold liquid tremendously. It was so smart of us to use red Solo cup. I thought so quickly on my feet. I was like, you know what? We need to gather this evidence. How can we do it? How about a red Solo cup? She's like, yeah, never have I ever done that before. As if the jury needed confirmation on that.
So this is the first time you ever performed a collection like that, correct?
I mean, the collection process itself is standard, applying the sterile water to the swabs and putting it in a potential stain of interest. However, no, I've never collected a sample from a red Solo cup before.
Have you ever taken a sample from a red Solo cup since that February 1st?
No, I've not.
Like you can literally almost hear him giggling because it's so bad. They hold it terrifically, Ashley. Yes, thank you. Terrifically. They hold liquid terrifically. And to me, it was like a lot with this witness. Like, we don't know the testing results, so she didn't really prove a whole lot. But she did say Proctor was there when she was doing her work. She didn't swab the inside of the taillight, which I thought was interesting. There was some question about, was there glass inside, kind of, confusing back and forth, but there was glass on the rear bumper, or apparent glass, as she kept saying. And she only used one swab to swab the entire outside of the taillight, which makes it difficult to figure out what part of the swab you potentially, whatever evidence you get from that, where was it on the taillight? Oh, sorry, I'm going to hold that one. He was wearing a jacket. How do they explain the marks on his arms? They cut through the jacket is what they would say. Could Alessi ask this witness if she has ever seen this kind of evidence from a person who was supposedly sideswept in the arm by a vehicle? It would be outside the scope of her knowledge. You heard Judge Cannoni say, lay the foundation, or not with this witness. That's what she said a couple times during objections, because those aren't the right. And he did push the envelope with this witness, but to me, he used her as his own witness. He was like, you don't know how this got there. Have you ever seen something like this before? Does this make sense to you? And like some of the stuff is like, I could answer it. Like one of the questions, and we're going to talk about how some of her answers were just illogical and how that works in your favor as a defense attorney. All right, let's jump to the next section. And this is where we're going to get to the sticker.
To have made correct observations and to make correct collection, correct?
Correct.
Three. Mr. With your Honor's permission, if Mr. Wolk, you could zoom in on the stickers, right? So, Ms. Hartnett, on your direct examination.
Did you notice how Alessi called it stickers? Literally setting her up. He's like, let's take a look at the stickers in this picture.
You stated that there were 2 stickers and that there were therefore glass associated with each sticker, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So 2 stickers and glass associated with each sticker, correct?
Yes, correct.
In fact, there's only 1 sticker, and the second sticker is merely a reflection of the first sticker, and therefore you have doubled the stickers and you've doubled the amount of glass on the bumper. Can you see that? Can you determine that from the photo?
No.
So it took me a second to realize, oh, holy crap, he's absolutely right. And witnesses like this, details are important. So to mess something like this up just kills them. But at this point, she should have just said, oh, wow, it is. You're right. It is. Now, it doesn't matter because I put all the glass together anyways, and I found the glass on the bumper. So while it is a mistake, it doesn't change the evidence that I collected. That's what she should have said, and it would have been over and potentially moved on. Alessi probably would have been like, well, this could be really important, especially to other people, which he does say, but I think that would have limited the damage. Instead, she argues with him. She will not agree. And I just think that hurt her credibility, because up to this point, I thought she was fine. I thought she was credible. But when you start arguing about stuff like this, it's like, dang it, I messed up. I thought it was 2 stickers based on the picture. It was only 1. I don't remember specifically these, details from 3 years ago, but I thought it was 2. It turns out it was just 1. But she doesn't do that.
No, can I see the
I don't remember this coming up in the first trial, by the way. So Alessi's doing his own work, starting from square one, which is exactly what he should do.
other photo, please?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we could, Your Honor, with
The photo, yes. Yes, you can. Glad you asked.
your permission, go to exhibit.
When you see this picture, it is very obviously, because guess what? There's no plastic inside the metal door of this Lexus. This black plastic is only on the outside, so it's obviously a reflection.
133.
Okay.
You asked to see this one. Can you now make a determination, having seen both of them, whether there is in fact just one sticker and therefore one volume of glass associated with it?
No, I cannot. You're saying this is a reflection?
I can't testify,
Okay.
so I'm asking you.
He's like, that's my question to you, ma'am.
With Your Honor's permission, if we could go back to the other picture
Okay.
and you could zoom in. You see a reverse B in that picture?
I'm sorry.
He's like, just in case you're not sure, let me show you how you wrote B on the sticker, and it's in reverse, as is what happens in a mirror, as we know from the inverted mirrored view of the Sally Port video. We've already gotten instruction on that. So let me show you that. Privateer, that's awesome. Congratulations to your daughter, and glad I can help.
I'm sorry, a reverse B as in Bob?
As in Bob Alessi.
No, could you zoom in on each of the stickers for me, please?
We'll do whatever you would like to do to answer the question. So
Sure.
He's like, don't threaten me with a good time. I'm happy to zoom in to prove my point. Because again, this is the confidence of a guy who is incredibly prepared. He already knows the questions to his own, or the answers to his own questions, right? He knows where this is going, and you can't give a bad answer. Either you're going to agree with him and you were just dead wrong, or you can disagree with him, which I actually think came off better for the defense, that she disagreed to something that was so obviously he was correct on. I didn't even know this. But when I had to pause it so I could look at this later, and then I looked, I was like, holy crap, he's right.
And then if I could just see the other sticker, please.
Absolutely.
Yes, I believe that is a reverse B, correct?
And doesn't that mean that it's a mirror reflection and that there's only one sticker that you put on and therefore only one volume of glass associated with one sticker?
Can you say that question again? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I will stay by the microphone. Is this microphone
Yes, yeah.
picking up? So therefore, can you now conclude, because of the reflection and because of the reverse B, that there is only in actuality, and there was only in actuality, one sticker and one B, and therefore one volume of glass associated with this bumper?
Man, just say yes. Just say yes, and maybe it's over. Maybe he'll move on. Like, this is very, very obvious, Chris. I agree with you. Like, you just got to eat this one. Witnesses like her, she's probably incredibly smart, incredibly detail-oriented, so this probably kills her, and I get it. I would hate to be on the stand and have to admit this, but you just have to. Robbie said, I don't get what it's reflecting off. It's a black SUV. When you shine the light on a black car, it's like a mirror. You know, you can look at yourself in a car, in almost any color car. You can see a reflection at certain angles. speaking of certain angles, that's instead what she decides to go with.
I don't know specifically that it's a reflection. It's not unusual for me to use the same letter on a sticker if I'm going to collect the items of evidence together. So if I had written it, on top or on the bottom of the scale on one of them and on the top of the scale on the other one, that is a possibility. It's difficult for me.
And that's not what happened. It's almost like, you sure about that? Whatever that meme is. Why is she doing this? Like, if I'm on the jury, I'm like, really? That's what you're going to go with? I don't think a simple yes, my bad, clearly a reflection, my bad. But the glass was obviously not inside the door panel of the Lexus. It wasn't stuck on the side of it. The glass was on the bumper like we had already talked about, my bad. Like, that's just much simpler to me. If I was Hank Brennan, that's what I would have wished she would have said. Kathy, I've never heard of them using a black light before. And in every legal case I've seen, they collect it just like they talked about in the undercarriage of the bumper in this case.
Me to tell by this picture. What I can tell you is that all the items of glass or apparent glass that were present on the bumper were collected together.
Fine. That's a good answer, how she just kind of coupled that. But just say, yeah, it looks like it is a reflection. I was wrong about that. But I got all the glass together, put it in the bag, and whatever was tested was tested.
So I can't say specifically by looking at this photo whether I just label two separate areas to make the photo show the pieces better or if it is a reflection. I can't say.
So from what we just went through, you're not able to tell that that is a reflection and therefore equivocation. Is that correct?
I'm
Sustained.
Do you?
I don't think that was asked and answered. I think she was dancing, and he should have been able to ask that last summary question, but the judge didn't let him.
Have any doubt whether there is a reflection on the photo that is on the screen at this moment? Do you have any doubt?
Oh, I would say it could be a possibility, yes.
Right. So you have doubt.
So then he tries to get her to say doubt. The defense has done that kind of multiple times, but it was kind of clunky and didn't go great. So she starts to talk about also, like, it could be like the different angles you take pictures of it with. Because of how she answered, he was like, well, this could be very important to the other people that are doing the investigation and doing the testing and going on with the case, right? She's like, it could, but the way I gathered it, it was all the same. It didn't really make a difference. It's like, okay. Then he shows her a video of January 29th of when things are being moved. White material, she says, is falling on the floor. And he says, and on the bumper, isn't it? She says, well, I think it was falling on the floor. I was like, that's a really good point. If they're manipulating things, moving the light, putting up the window of that door could go up, driving the car around, putting it up on the tow truck, stuff could easily fall. And so is that what happened? Just planting doubt, poking holes. Then he starts to ask her what this question is about. How could the hair in the glass survive a nor'easter going back and forth or through Denton, and Canton? He asks her, what were the winds? That's not a fair question. She doesn't know. He shows her something in evidence that says 50 miles an hour. She doesn't really know. But he winds it all up and he sets it up to where it's like, we have this glass. We have this hair. Really? You think it just sat on the bumper with everything this car went through? And we'll listen to how he sets that up a little bit.
So try and ask a question without too much.
I understand. Understood, Your Honor.
He's like, try to save the windup, Mr. Alessi, which he does do a lot of windup, a lot of summarizing while he's questioning, which I would object to too if I was the prosecutor. But it's helpful if you're the defense and you get to summarize it and the jury hears you summarize it or wind it up.
Thank you.
By the way, we just crossed the hour mark. We're not going to go a ton of overtime today, but hit that like button for even just a little bit of overtime. And let's see if we can get this video to 20,000 likes. Almost all these Karen Read videos have, which is just crazy in my mind that 20,000 people like a video is just crazy. You guys are the best. I appreciate it.
In your experience as a forensic scientist too, is it possible for glass that is perched on a bumper to travel 60 miles and be subject to average wind speeds of 15.7 and still remain on?
Yeah, 15.7. I may have said 50. I meant 15.
Objection.
So it's sustained without a proper foundation.
Understood. Have you ever had experience with analyzing glass on any surface, an outdoor surface, and correlating that glass to weather conditions to make a determination as to the likelihood that glass could be or not be in a certain place on a certain date and time? Have you ever done that?
No.
Based upon what you know about this case, just based upon what you know, and from your role as a forensic scientist too only, do you believe that information would be relevant to your role as a forensic scientist too?
Sustained.
And then after a bunch of objections are sustained, he's like, let me try this one. Let's see how this goes. I've got a question for you.
How did you recover the glass? What tool did you use to recover the glass on the bumper?
Tweezers.
How difficult or easy was it for you to take the glass off that bumper with, did you say tweezers?
Yes, that's correct.
How hard or easy was it for you to remove those pieces of glass with tweezers?
It was not difficult.
So it was easy.
Yes, correct.
Bada bing, bada bang. So we're supposed to believe this glass just sat there on the bumper for all these different drives through all this different wind when it was very easy for you to just pull it off, right? And by the way, the angles of the camera was not with the glass. That was with the hair, which we're going to get to now, because that's where he moves on to. And again, he lays the foundation, asks all the very similar questions. Do you know how the hair got there? How long was it there? But they eventually get into the pictures of the hair, which again was a little bit clunky. But we'll listen to a little bit of the back and forth here. He really tries to lock her into, does it look like a J? Does it look like a C? What does it look like? Because he's really trying to lock her into the very obvious fact that this hair moves and it looks very different. And of course, she tries to blame it on the different angles of the picture. So Tyler, you ever seen a woman's hair stick to the side of a shower, surface tension because of the water? First off, Tyler, I would like to say something very important. It's not just women's hair that can stick to the side of the shower and stay there, okay? Not just women's hair. Let's be inclusive. Just kidding, of course. I know that's not what you meant. But yes, I agree with you. That absolutely can happen. But you know what doesn't happen to the shower? You don't drive through 15-mile-an-hour winds. You don't get put on a tow truck. You don't get moved around, manipulated, touched, et cetera, breathed on in a dry area like this hair. But most importantly, a picture taken not that long apart where the hair is moving. So it's obviously not sticking to the side of this like it would in the shower. But I would agree with you. I could understand how it might stick there, but that's what makes these pictures so interesting. So let's listen to a little bit of this.
It's not a trick here, but I'm just going to show you another picture of that hair that might be in a different location or different shape. So I want to give a contrast. So whatever term you want to use that's fair to you.
So I think it looks like a C. I can't say, it could also be like a U. I'm not sure which way the ends are facing from this perspective.
Can you once again, just so we're clear and the jury's clear, just draw a circle around it again, what you're talking about, and we won't give it a name, right? We'll just do the contrast. Right.
Okay.
So if I were to just say there looks like there might be a little hook at the top and then there's a vertical line, is that a fair description?
Yes.
Okay, so can we go with that? A little hook at the top and then a straight or a line, vertical line that comes down?
Sure.
And
yes.
that hook is orienting left, correct? Of the vertical line, it's to the left of the vertical line?
Yes, I do see it from this perspective to the left. That's
okay,
correct.
Very good. And that's the apparent hair.
Yes.
And you only saw or found one apparent hair, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, if we could, Mr. Wolk, now go to Exhibit 144A. And if you could zoom in on that for Ms. Hartnett and the jury's benefit. could you draw a circle now around the apparent hair?
It looks different to me, right? I mean, like it obviously looks different to me. Regardless, his follow-up questions still have a very similar hit to them. John, I grew up with 2 older sisters. Curly, thick hair was all over the shower. I have nightmares about my dad cleaning out our drain. It was disgusting. And now I'm doing it for me and my wife's shower. And I am 50% of the problem.
Thank you. And isn't that apparent hair now oriented almost 180 degrees, the opposite, with the hook orienting right?
The photo's taken from a different angle. So do you see the hook? Are you talking about the hook at the top? Looks now, it appears to be on the right, but I can't, they're taken from different angles. Sure.
So Voyager, it could, but it seems like it's moving in this, like right now. And when they're taking this picture, so it's like, when did it? Here's the point. I don't know what it proves. I don't know how big of a deal it is. Is it 50 miles an hour or 15? I don't remember. I could be wrong. I don't remember. But it really is like the defense trying to plant doubt. Will this work with the jury? I don't know. But the witnesses arguing to me hurts her credibility a little bit.
No.
Are you speculating that it's taken from a different angle?
I mean, I'd have to see them side by side, but it's just the orientation of the, my marking. Can you put them up side by side?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Would be helpful you answer your questions? Happy to do it.
Potentially, yes. Thank you.
Once again, he's like, we're happy to put a side by side up for you. Let's even zoom in.
I can tell that they're taking.
Let's start with the old one first, that you would like, and then we can, okay. Is that where you wanted to start?
Yes, just by looking at those, to me, it looks like one is from slightly to the side of the vehicle and one is more directly head on.
Right, so one's slightly to the side and the other's a little bit more head on, but that's the only difference, correct? It's
Yes.
still the same from top to bottom. It's still the same from side to side. It's the same orientation, correct?
The vehicle didn't move, but the camera angle is different in both pictures. That's what I was saying in the other one. So the camera angle is different. The one camera angle appears for who's ever taking the photo to be standing off to the right of the vehicle. The second photo looks like it's more directly head on.
The 570 is oriented the same way in both pictures, correct? You see the 570?
Yes. Yes.
On the left, and you see the 570 on the right, correct?
Yes, I do.
They're same orientation, right?
They're in the same location on the vehicle, but I don't think they're at the same orientation. I think one looks.
If you could, I want to make sure you finish, but if you could just, my questions are rather narrow.
Okay.
And then if you need more time to answer them, I'm happy to do that.
So let's just ask a
Yes,
question.
thank you, Ryan. So isn't the 570 in each picture oriented the exact same way?
If you could just explain what you mean by oriented, I think that's where I'm confused.
They're the same, you can read the 570 horizontally. It's the same horizontal plane, correct? It's the same straight across, like one doesn't have the 570 upside down. You can read it from left to right, a 5, a 7, and a 0, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Now, if we can, Mr. Woke, now zoom in and get the largest depiction of each one from a zoom in. Are you saying the difference in how that hair appears is from a different camera angle?
No, I'm not making that conclusion. I'm just saying I can't make any other conclusion because they're from different angles. I don't feel that I can compare the two.
Is it possible?
She is refusing to compare the two. Chance NP, that's a good point. Some magic happens sometimes when you put something on a car, so maybe it is. Farmer, she actually extracted this. She took the hair off, and we're going to get there because that's one of the other parts. That's one of the other important parts about this. It's like somehow this hair stayed on, but hold on one second. Brooke is asking me to unlock my car, so let me unlock my car. Okay, I did it. Okay. Yep, it's just another optical illusion.
That the hair moved when someone took a photograph?
Can you answer that question?
Again, I just can't make that conclusion because I didn't take the photo and the photos look like they're from different angles.
In your experience, you've taken samples many times of apparent hair, correct?
Have I taken samples
Yes.
such as that? Yes, that's correct.
Has it ever happened that when you're taking a sample, the photographer or someone breathes on it and the apparent hair moves? Does that ever happen?
She allows that. Why would you not allow that? What's the objection? Mrs. RCM said, look at the top of the stickers. One has scratch marks under it, one doesn't. Stop looking at the hair. I don't know.
I've never had firsthand experience with that. So that if somebody breathes on an item of evidence, that would be something I would note.
Other than, and is it correct that you're speculating as to what could be causing this difference? Are you speculating?
Sustained. I'd like to see counsel at sidebar for a couple of minutes, please.
So a lot of people, by the way, I think he said the same thing, like it wasn't hard for her to pull the hair off with her tweezers either, which is important. You can say what you see with it, right? I just think if this was all they had, if this is all the defense had, it's like, yeah, good luck. Good luck. This is not going to be enough. But it's when you stack all of these issues and just very weird things. And of course, Proctor's here again. He's overseeing everything she does. He had an opportunity to be there when she's not. You know, stuff was moving around on the cameras that we saw from January 29th before she got there on February 1st. It's just like adds a little more poking of the holes into this case. That's all it is. This is not a home run for the defense. This does not prove Karen Read is innocent. I don't want anybody to think like that, but I don't want anybody to think I think that, right? You may think that. But Debbie makes a good point too. This is the first time I've actually seen the pictures of his arm. Does it look like, it does look like dog bites. I think that's why the defense keeps showing the pictures, because the Commonwealth hasn't proven how that was caused by a car. And the defense has already planted the seed. They think it came from a dog bite or dog scratches. I think that's why they keep doing it. Hair trauma from Lisa Louise. Saw Robbie says the top of the hair isn't touching the surface. It's sticking out. That's why it looks different in different positions with different angles. I don't think that's good for the Commonwealth, right? It's like hanging on by a thread, this little hair that happens to be there when she shows up from Proctor's request to document it. I think that's the defense's theory. Whether the hair moved or whether it's literally hanging on by a thread is not good for the Commonwealth. That's my opinion, right? That's my opinion. So they basically end the day there, and they're going to come back. She is going to come back tomorrow, and they're going to continue forward. So some points and some foundational things that the Commonwealth had to get out today through some of these witnesses, and the defense used them to poke more holes and try to create or highlight more reasonable doubt to this jury. Scott, hi Peter, playing 18 holes on Friday and will stream this trial. What factors will the jurors have to consider when comparing the accident experts? I mean, to me, they're really going to have to determine the credibility of the Commonwealth. Can they prove based on the math and the science that this damage done to the car would equate the damage done to John O'Keefe? That's incredibly important to me. That's what they're going to have to do, because we know ARCA is going to say it's just not plausible with the math and the science. Rebecca, I'm a little behind. Could the hair in the grass have been frozen and was easy to remove after in the Sally Port? I don't know. That's up to the lawyers and the evidence to prove to the jury. Could have come from a lot of places, I guess. Could it have been planted? Would it have stayed on there? How would they have planted it? When would they have planted it? I just don't know. But the Commonwealth is trying to use it as evidence that this car hit John O'Keefe. And is that likely? Is that plausible? Is that something you would look at as, yeah, this is evidence that he was hit by this car? Because that's what they need the jury to believe. That's what they need to prove to the jury. Agree 100%, Peter. The hair and glass staying on in a storm, not just a storm, but being put up on a tow truck. You know, where the car had to be, the angle of the car had to change. Being taken off the tow truck, being driven into the Sally Port. I don't know. All right. That's all I got. Love you all. Hit that like button. I do want to go watch the Lori Vallow and what happened in that hearing today. So I will be checking that out. But that's all we got for this video. Until next time, we are out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.